Okay, so my name is Emilynn. I'm one of the nurses with Charlin. Been on a few of the videos before. Usually I'm with Charles.
A familiar
talking.
face.
Yeah.
Good, how are you?
Good. My name is Charles.
Get up.
Hey guys, welcome back to a new Charlin CareRides. Today we have Emilynn, one of our Charlin nurses, and we're going to be taking you along to one of our visits and just learn more about what Emilynn does with home health and hospice nursing. So,
Woo!
if you could just go ahead and just introduce yourself, how you got into nursing, and all that backstory stuff.
Ooh. Okay, so my name is Emilynn. I'm one of the nurses with Charlin. Been on a few of the videos before.
For hospice, I don't think aid on home health is. I think it's important first to.
I know his brain. It's usually I'm with Charles.
A familiar
talking.
face.
Yeah. So I've worked for Charlin for it's been 6.5 years now. Been in a few different roles. Was director of nursing for hospice for the first 5 years. In the last 2 years, a year and a half-ish, 2 years, I've been director of nursing over home health and hospice. And most recently, I have been back out in the field on home health. So that's been a journey. I have been a nurse for 10 years now, which feels impossible. And I guess I went into nursing because I really wanted to do hospice. Kind of had a calling from the Lord when I was in high school, and He just opened up every door for me to get into nursing school. School's really hard for me. Testing is not easy for me, but He carried me through it, so here I am. I worked in the hospital for 2 years in St. Louis before we moved here, and then 2 years here after I was having my first baby, and then there was kind of a void in the company, and so Charles asked if I would step back into hospice, and I felt like I had had enough experience that I could be out in the field kind of by myself. That was my hesitation with going straight into hospice, was I wanted to get the skills that I could in the hospital, and so that did all of that for, like I said, a good 4 years, and then jumped into hospice and really just learned as I went for a long time, and yeah, been here ever since. Home health's a little different than hospice, but I actually really like it. I feel like it's a different pace, it's a different mindset, and it's a different muscle than hospice is. A little less emotionally straining, which is kind of nice for me. But still have a love for hospice for sure, and always will. But I think it's nice right now for me, and just in this season of my life, and it's really rewarding to watch our patients get better and to help them get better, which is actually really cool. So haven't done that in nursing for a little while now. I've kind of been on the opposite side of the spectrum, so that's been the biggest this is a little bit relieving actually. So it's a nice switch. It's been healthy for me for a little bit.
So what's your typical day like as a home health nurse?
So just depends on what time my first appointments are. So usually the day before, I call all my patients and schedule them. I do my best to schedule them kind of like where they're at in the Metroplex, because then I'm not driving everywhere. But there's some days that certain patients have certain appointments and I just can't work around it. So, every once in a while I'm driving all over the place. But most of the time I kind of map out my patients and map out my day the night before, and then really just hit the ground running about 8:30, 9 o'clock. A lot of patients don't really like to be seen before 9 because I am going to their house, so they're like, I need to be dressed and look cute for you. So definitely be respectful of that timing, but then really just hitting the ground running. I would say typical day, somewhere between 4 and 7 patients. Just depends on if they're admissions or if they're routine visits or if they're recertifications or discharges. those bigger visits sometimes take a little bit longer. So usually I bring my lunch and eat in my car. I have my iPad, so I'll just park in a shady spot and eat my lunch and keep charting and keep working. A lot of times I'm calling doctors between patients so that I can coordinate any new orders that they might need. If I'm in a facility and I have several patients, then I'll definitely coordinate with the facility staff that's there and see if there's any orders or needs that changes in conditions, whatever else have you, so that I can help case manage that situation. So that's and then usually I'm done by about, I try and see my patients, try and get them all done before 4 o'clock. Sometimes it doesn't happen, just depends on where they're at. Usually finish about 5 at the latest, and then go home, see my boys for a little bit, get a little bit of a reprieve, and then once they go to bed, I'll finish my charting. Usually I finish 90% of my charting like while I'm out in the field at the bedside. Sometimes between patients I can snag a couple extra minutes, but at nighttime I like to tie up the charts really and make them look nice, make sure that I didn't miss anything and just double check them and submit basically. So
Gotcha.
I try not to have to chart too late, but sometimes it happens if I have a couple of OASs in the same day, so just depends.
What are some things you try to keep in mind when you're visiting a patient at their home versus at a facility? Is there anything extra?
Good question. So home patients, they tend to be a little bit more relaxed actually, which is really nice. If I've seen the patient before, I kind of know what I'm walking into. If I've never met the patient before, could be an exciting adventure. Never know what kind of home. Everybody lives so differently. So always need to be respectful of their space. Definitely calling the day before and asking, is it okay if I come at this time? And this is, the reason I'm coming and what to expect. My first visit with patients, especially, when I'm admitting a patient, usually I'm there for a good hour or two. So I do kind of preface that with my patients as well. Facility patients tend to be a little bit easier because they're usually open to whatever time we want to come by. We really just try and avoid meal times. That's about it. Because meals are always the big thing. So try and avoid meal times for those facility patients. But there's really not a ton of other things.
Is there any advice you would give someone who's going into this field or is transitioning from hospice to home health?
One of my patients said, life is an adventure. So I think it's really important to have grit. There is definitely, no job is all ponies and rainbows, right? No job is all perfect. And I think every job has its challenges. Every job has its adjustment periods. I have loved hospice for so long, and I always will. But going into home health has been a little bit emotionally freer for me. I think it's probably what makes me a good nurse is that I'm a really empathetic person. So I really put myself in the shoes of my patients a lot. And so being caring and compassionate is something that can't be taught, in my opinion. And I think that, wherever the Lord has me, I can exude those things regardless of, if I'm helping a patient pass away or I'm helping a patient get better, right? So, there's value to both settings. They're just different seasons of those patients' lives. And so, every one of my home health patients will probably eventually be a hospice patient. And so kind of keeping that in mind too, of what is the patient's attitude about their health journey in this time and in this season, is so cool to kind of watch that. And I have had lots of patients that, I've followed on home health for the last just 2 months. And then, you know, I've helped them transition over to hospice, and it's been such a blessing to see now my hospice team take care of them, and to watch them kind of walk that journey and support that family through that. And so there's a lot of like reward, kind of like a proud mother hen, I guess, of feeling like I get to watch, you know, that whole journey. And I always say, like, my hospice nurses, like, hospice is kind of like the midwifery for death, unfortunately, but also fortunately. And so I think, you know, walking people in that season is that's so rewarding. There's beauty to it. It's hard, but it's like a good hard. You know? Yeah. So, yeah, it's really, it's very rewarding. And that's actually one of the things that I love so much about my job too, is that I do get to sit with my patients and talk with them and meet them in their own space, right? Like in a hospital setting, you're kind of rushed between patients, or in a facility setting, you're kind of rushed between patients, where you don't get to really sit with them and talk with them and be like, oh, you have snowmen all over you. Wow, that must be a thing. Oh, you love to craft. That's amazing, right? Like, you know, we can have those conversations, and that puts those patients at ease, and then I can teach them a lot more effectively than when they're in a hospital setting and they're going through a crisis, right? Yeah, so that's so cool to be able to do that. And I enjoy home health too, because a little, like, clinically, it's also a little bit more diverse, I would say. With hospice, you know, there are kind of preset measures, but with home health, you know, I get to draw labs, I get to, you know, review some clinical information. That's how do we get to this space. I get to learn about new medications and teach on those things, and those are really cool things for me. I love that stuff too. Love getting my hands dirty. So yeah, I think that answers your question. Okay.
Can you walk us through what like a typical home health visit looks like for you, like even like the preparation that leads up to it?
Oh, sure, yeah. So for my home health patients, when I go out, if it's a brand new patient, I'm going to definitely review like any clinical information I have. So our intake team in the office is awesome. So they really do a lot of that groundwork. They'll, you know, screen the patient and make sure it's appropriate. They do all the insurance stuff and all that good things of who's the payer source and everything. Is our LVN, she does the intake report, so she'll make a little report for me that says, like, you know, why are they coming on home health, what disciplines are going to be needed, like skilled nursing, PT, OT, and then they kind of explain all of those pieces, and then who's the following doctor as well, and what are the diagnoses. And then when I go out to assess, I have all that clinical information kind of in my head. And I'm gonna look for what medications are actually in the home versus what have been ordered. So sometimes there's, you know, what we call medication reconciliation that takes a big chunk of my visits. And sometimes it's just an assessment of like, oh, you just had a surgery, let me see your wound. What's going on with that? Is this a new problem? Definitely pain assessments, super important. And then kind of their social situation, right? Who lives at home with them? Who helps them? All of those pieces are really key as well. So figure out like, you know, how much is this person helping you? How much can you do for yourself? Because again, at the end of the day, the goal of home health is to get them as independent as possible. And so, you know, that looks different for everybody, in different processes and different diseases and different stages of those diseases too. So, getting to assess all of those things on a regular, like routine visit that I've known a patient, usually I'll go in, kind of check in with them and see like what has changed in the last week since I've seen them, or 2 weeks since I've seen them, whatever the frequency is. Always ask for new medications, like you know, have you had any new medications? Did you see the doctor this last week? Did they order any new medications? Kind of figuring out what their knowledge deficits are. But really the bulk of my teaching during that visit, yes, I'm assessing like their head to toe, right? Checking their vitals, listening to their lungs, all of that stuff. And I can tell a lot just by talking to them, right? Like, are they alert and oriented? Do they know what's going on? Are they confused or overwhelmed? Are they anxious? Are they depressed? You know, all of those things, I can just look and see those things, right? And so, I try and make my patients as comfortable as possible by just having conversation with them. and then I'll slip in, the vital signs and listening to them and all that good stuff. But the bulk of my teaching comes from when we do an admission, we create a plan of care, right? So we have like a set plan of things. So sometimes if I go and they're like, oh, I haven't had any changes in the past week. Okay, well, let me pull up your plan of care, because when we admitted you, we wanted to make sure we address these 6 or 7 things, right? And so I'll teach on those things, right? So it might be fall precautions. It might be, okay, do you know why you're taking hydrochlorothiazide and what it's for and what disease it's treating for you? And do you know about that disease? And do you know that you have CHF? Or, okay, you're a diabetic. How long have you been a diabetic? Do you understand why we have to check your blood sugars and all of those things? So I get to do a lot of that teaching. And then sometimes there's wound care involved, and those are specific orders from the doctor. And so we'll do all of that stuff too. So, and then usually I'll tell them I'll see them next week, and then we'll keep going. And I'll schedule with them the night before the following week. So some of my patients I kind of have set times for, but most of them I usually kind of figure out the night before because my schedule can change. So
how do you like encourage like family members? So you talked about like how like the goal is kind of get the patient the independency. So how do you like encourage family members, like let them do things on their own?
Right.
Is it ever hard to get them on the same page?
Oh yeah, definitely hard. Sometimes it really does. You have to, just as much as I'm assessing what's going on with the patient, I'm also assessing the family members, right? What is their willingness to be taught? If they're in a situation that they're really not like willing to be taught, or they're not open to, hey, you have to be the helper that's going to change, like help this person change their colostomy bag twice a week. Oh, well, that's a really touchy thing. How do they feel about that? What are their emotions around that? And that's where like it's my job as the nurse to really evaluate, like, okay, did you have a bad experience? Are you just grossed out by, certain things? Like, what are your barriers to this, and how can we overcome those barriers together? Because like as me in the home, like on the ground with these people, like talk about boots on the ground marketing, it's boots on the ground nursing, right? Like it's figuring out in your own space, like, what do I need to do to figure out this person to be able to teach them to help this other person? So it's a definite assessment of the entire situation, very holistic, which is also the other really cool thing about it too. So I have an awesome social worker, Miss Terry. She rocks, and sometimes I have to get her involved too, because there's aspects of like, this patient is not going to be able to stay at home because they cannot manage this disease or this problem safely and effectively. And there's harder cases sometimes that we get those, and they're sad because some of the times the patients don't want the extra help, and that's hard. But there's also that respect factor of they do have the choice to make that decision. So there's challenges there, but yeah, definitely have to do a lot of work with family members. A lot of times it's, the spouse or the daughter or the son, taking care of it. It's me teaching them like, hey, these are the things to look out for before it becomes a true emergency, and to try and prevent a hospitalization or try and prevent an accident. So I do a lot of that teaching. So, yeah.
Kind of going off of that, like how do you build trust and establish relationships with families and patients if you're, like, how do I say this, if you're there for a short amount of time in their home?
Consistency is key. So yeah, they might meet me for 2 hours one day, but then I'm coming, for 6 weeks. Each week I'm there for, 30 minutes to an hour. It's also, it's body posture. It's your openness to like let them talk and share their story and be a listener more than just a talker, right? I can't come in and just be like, okay, today we're going to talk about this. Well, I don't even know how their week's been. I don't know, if they've had a bad doctor's appointment right before I got there. I don't know if they've been sick all night and didn't sleep for 2 days, right? Like, I have to take all those things into account. So meeting that patient right where they're at and figuring out, are you in a good mood today? Are you even teachable today, right? Like, if they're not, then I'm not going to get anywhere. Or, if they're dealing with a wound and I'm going and it's not healing like it should be. Okay, what do I need to do to encourage this patient and say, hey, this isn't going like I really want it to, but at the same time, these are the 5 things I'm going to do to try and advocate for you, because I'm your nurse at the bedside. I'm your nurse in your home, but I can call your doctor and say, hey, these are the specific things I'm seeing. We need to do this, 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 and this. And doing those actions and making those things happen for those patients so that they don't have to go to the hospital, that builds trust, right? That builds that, oh, she cares. She's advocating for me. She's trying to fix this so that I don't have to go back to the hospital. So all of those pieces really play into it. So it's, I mean, yeah, it definitely is people skills. It's being able to make friends with whoever you are. And it's interesting because I can do this in a work setting, but like in personal life, I'm so introverted. Like, put me in a room with like a big party, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. So, but this is so different. I feel confident in this space, so it's different. I can talk into it, and I can be in it, and do what I need to. But
like, we can just tell like you're so passionate about it. Like, it's so inspiring. Yeah.
I do love it. I do. It's I never saw myself doing home health, honestly. I love hospice so much, and I could talk about it for days.
Part 2, CareRides.
Yeah, part 2, right? But yeah, no, it's I really do love being that person to be light in a space that's like, it can be dark, right? Like, even on home health, right? There's some patients who are so depressed, and they're just depressed about their situation, depressed about their continual medical problems, and being able to walk in and be like, hey, let's talk about this. And there are a lot of times where in visits I'm like, I need you to tell me one positive thing that's happened to you this week, because truly you need to get your mind off of how poorly you feel. I have had I just discharged one yesterday, sadly, that I'm like every visit was a battle to get her out of this dark place so that I could get her to a bright place so that I could teach her. And she's dealing with chronic issues right now, and those are hard, and they get exhausting, and they get depressing, and they get tiring. But acknowledging that those are real feelings, but okay, let's shift our mindset. Let's get to a place where I can help you, and that you can see that I'm trying to help you, because I don't ever want to come in and I'm a guest in their home at the end of the day, right? And they could kick me out just as fast as they let me in. So, goal is to never get kicked out. That's for sure.
What advice would you give to families or patients going through like this whole home health journey for like the first time?
Just be open to the teaching. You may find something in conversation with your nurse that you don't understand fully, and ask those questions. I tell my families all the time, you're gonna think of 12 questions as soon as I leave. Write them down, put them in our blue book, and next time when I come, I will answer all those questions for you. Totally open to all of that, and definitely beneficial. So, write down your questions so you don't forget them, because then you'll be like, oh man, I remember I was going to ask her that, and then the same thing will happen at night, and you're going to be like, really should have asked her that today when I saw her. So yeah, definitely just be open to learning new things, be open to the ways that your nurse can help you. So.
Okay, and to wrap it up, can you share like a memorable experience from a patient, like where something like you did, you're like, oh, I remember this story. Yeah.
Ooh.
Like it's always stuck with you.
That's
Or
hard.
like a moment where you're like, yeah, this is what I love doing.
Yeah.
Oh. Let me think about that for a minute. This sweet lady, just this last week actually, I mean there's so many, but this one's just at the top of my head right now. This sweet lady this last week, she came home from the hospital, and we had orders for home health, and this sweet lady is like 95 years old, and as I'm reviewing all her clinical information, I'm looking at it going, this is kind of a lot. Like, what are going to be our goals here? And so I went and asked, walked in, allowed the daughters to kind of explain the situation, and they were, super sweet about it. And they were just kind of at a loss, and I tiptoed into the conversation about, well, what do you want for your mom, or what do you think mom can handle? And as we were talking, they basically told me like she can't handle any of that. And so I had the opportunity to really do like a hospice 101 in that moment, and I gently explained, okay, so home health is this, but these are all the benefits of hospice, and it sounds like that's what you guys really need right now. And you could just see the relief like wash over their faces. Yes, one of the daughters was very sad, but she was also like, I just want to take care of mom, and I'm so scared I'm going to do something wrong. And so I went in and met the patient, and I asked the daughters, I said, is it okay if I talk to her about what we were just talking about? And she was like, yeah. And so I assessed the patient, kind of asked her questions. And then I said to her, I said, what are your goals? And she goes, I just want to die in peace. And I was like, wow. I said, well, so great, because I just spoke with your daughters about how to get that happen for you. And I say it lightly because I see it all the time. I'm sorry. It's one of those spaces where I love it when families are so accepting of what they want, like their loved one wants. And if it is death, that they're going to accept that, and that they're going to accept the help for it. And so, long story short, I didn't admit her to home health, but we were able to get her an order for hospice, and we got her admitted on hospice, and she's peaceful. And instead of like pushing her to do therapy or pushing her to get better or making sure she's eating or making sure she's getting up and doing things for herself, no, we get to pamper her and love her and let her be comfortable in her last days. And she does. She has CHF, and it's taking her so fast, but she's comfortable. And the family feels so supported, and that's what's so important.
Yeah, and they don't want to push her to do something she doesn't want to do. Just make her feel comfortable.
So that's super rewarding to me in those moments when I'm like, actually, let me stop this train, and we're gonna reverse it, and we're gonna make it what you want it to be. And letting my patients speak for themselves. That's where I'm like, oh, this is what I went into for this. So that was super rewarding. And honestly, that sweet woman, oh my gosh, she's so cute. I was like, I'm gonna sit here all day with you. I don't want to leave you. She was so sweet. So one of those moments.
That was good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily, for joining us on this CareRides.
She's the best.
We will definitely have another if you guys like this one. So
maybe we could do that one about like more in depth about hospice.
We'll do like an hour-long conversation of our patients. But
we'll drive to Dallas for that one.
But make sure to like and subscribe and comment below if you have any questions for Emilynn.
Wait, my boys always want me to say this. I'm going to say it this time. Ready? Make sure you like and subscribe to Charlin page.
Woo!
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to like and subscribe. We hope this was a blessing to you, your family, your loved ones, all your friends. Share it. And if you want to watch more videos, here they are. Enjoy, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.